Welcome to the podcast, Colts Nation 365. This is episode 3. I'm your host, Zach Boyd, and I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to follow along. And as always, I'll have my co-host, Chris DuBoise, on here. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, what's up, Zach? It's been a crazy training camp week, huh?
Absolutely, man. I guess we should just dive right into it. Obviously, this week you're going to cover the injury report anyways. And, top of mind today, Andrew Luck. First thing comes out is that calf strain seems to be a little more of an issue, a lingering thing that's going on. Chris, are you concerned at all just because of the past at how, we've handled the injuries with Andrew Luck? Are you concerned, or you think this is just an extra cautious thing that they're doing with him?
So there is quite a level of concern. I would probably put it maybe at a 5 out of 10. It's not, oh my God, what's going to happen to Andrew Luck? I really do think that he's finally learning how to really control his body and know when to, hey, don't push it, don't do anything too heavy on it. So I think it's just really extra precaution. They've already said they're going to keep him out of the first preseason game. So it's going to probably be a couple of weeks before we see him again.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, I just don't know how to feel about it. I'm actually kind of optimistic, though. Andrew doesn't normally come out and have a press conference and discuss his own injuries. He just has a history of being very tight-lipped. He was very, very candid with reporters. He told them, hey, look, I've had it x-rayed. I've had it looked at. Everything other than the strain is fine. So, I think if we get 2-3 games into the preseason, this is cause for concern, but I think this is just kind of a wait and see approach. As far as other injuries, I know something came out about Jabal Sheard. You got anything else out there, man, it pertains to Jabal or anybody else?
So Jabal's pretty much been out. He injured himself, I believe, on Friday. His knee swelled up. They did an MRI on him, but they actually have not released any other information about him. So he's pretty much just been out this whole time. So once we get some more information, that'll be interesting to see if, obviously they can't put him on PUP anymore this beginning of the season since he practiced. But maybe there's a chance they put him on IR and he'll be one of the two kind of designated IR players that can come back. I believe it's 8 games in the season that we'd have to wait for him. So we're kind of waiting for it. Jim Irsay did come out and say that it's not season ending. So we'll see him this season, but definitely a possible IR.
Other than that, it sounds like, Chris, we've got a pretty clean, just some small, one day off, just rest maintenance type things. And before we get into it, I promised the guys over at Twitter, Colts Nation 365, we put a keyword in each of our podcasts today. And we're going to draw tomorrow at 5 p.m. Today's keyword is at Chris D. So DM me at Chris D to be entered in the contest for tomorrow at 5. Moving on, Chris, I thought it'd be cool to kind of talk about some camp battles today. I've got a few topics I wanted to talk about. I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'll just kind of start off, with cornerback. You've got Rock Ya-Sin, Quincy Wilson, Jalen Collins. I did a podcast earlier today with Sam Sinclair, and he's actually been down there, and it mentioned that it's been very fluid. Jalen Collins has had first-team reps. Quincy's had first-team. Rock's had first-team reps. I'm kind of on the side there. I believe they're going to let Rock take his lumps, and I think Rock's going to start day one. I know we discussed this a couple days ago, and I think you're probably going to feel a little bit different about this. What do you think about this, Chris?
Yeah, so as well as Rock Ya-Sin's been playing, once you actually get into a game and have to kind of learn all the schemes against another team, I feel like he needs, probably at least 4 or 5 games in the season before he's starting. Obviously, he really could earn that role. He's very talented. He works very, very hard. There was a video that Locked On Colts showed after practice, him still, doing those back pedals, learning how to turn around really quickly. So, he's a hard worker. He could really earn that spot. But he did come from a college that mostly ran man coverage. And as a lot of people know, this team runs cover 2 most of the time, a little bit of a zone. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve with him. So I think Quincy Wilson will probably start week 1. Uh, when we go to that nickel package, obviously Kenny Moore is the outside starter when that happens for just our base 4-3. But I think Quincy Wilson will get that starting role just because he's really improved over the last course of the year, and I think he is the player that he's still very talented. He was a second round pick. I think he's got the inside track right now. But Rocketson's really shown a lot of I think he's had a couple interceptions already. Uh, I've been impressed with him so far, so I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, man, this one will be fun to watch. Another one that I was going to talk about, and I kind of made some notes earlier in the week. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I think we both probably feel the same way. But it was Anthony Walker and Bobby Okereke. I think we probably both agree. I'm going to get your opinion here in a second that it's Anthony Walker's job to lose. Okereke, you know, kind of had that reputation for on passing downs. He's long, he's sticky, he's fast. And I think that's something he'll get phased into as the year goes. I think they just want to get faster and get more depth in the draft. You could see how they went that direction with drafting so many linebackers. But I just think Anthony Walker is a great pro. He gets high praise from Matt Eberflus. And I think ultimately he'll win that job. And I expect him to start every game this year if he's healthy. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Yeah, Anthony Walker showed, last year that he was a very improved player. I think playing with Darius Leonard next to him obviously helped out a lot. Uh, but I mean, over 100 tackles, he had interception, sack. He just played like someone who looked like he would deserve to be on the field. Now, what I would really like to see, if Bobby Okereke really is pushing him that hard, Ballard and Frank Reich have both talked about all their linebackers can kind of play all the positions. So I mean, maybe we put the best 3 on the field, and they try to put Walker and Okereke next to Leonard. With Okereke kind of in that middle linebacker role, and Walker being that Sam thumper because he really is a thumper. He really helps out that run defense, and I think that would be a really interesting combination. What do you think about that, Zach?
Yeah, man. I think actually, it's one thing we really didn't get in and see last year. And I think one of the reasons why is we just didn't have enough talent at the linebacker position. And they wanted to clearly address that. There were rumors in the offseason we were going to go out and look at CJ Mosley. So we definitely wanted to address that position and kind of see what we could do with it. But we'll just see how this season goes. It'll be very interesting. That'll be a fun position to watch. Probably my favorite position to watch this year will be the safety position. I think we'll both agree that Malik Hooker will be the starting free safety. But now the other safety position is wide open. You've got Matthias Farley, you've got Kari Willis, you've got Kindred, and you've got Clayton Gathers. I think that's really a deep dog fight. If you listen to our first podcast, one of our kind of bold predictions is that Clayton Gathers, if not healthy, may not end up making this team. And that's one of the reasons why. Just a pure amount of talent at the safety position. I actually think I like Farley's position flex a little more. I think he can cover better than Gathers can. And he really, other than last year, he has been a pretty durable football player. One guy that really flashed in camp, and I know it's a guy that you like, is Kari Willis. Rave reviews from the coaches and said he's really just picking up things a lot faster than they anticipated. How do you envision that second safety position, opposite of Malik Hooker, panning out for the Colts this year, Chris?
So obviously the hope is, Gathers is healthy, he's ready to go. I've seen a little bit of training camp footage. He kind of did look a little slow, obviously, especially in coverage. It's never really been his strong point. Uh, but I still got to go with Gathers as long as he's healthy. Behind him, though, Willis is really kind of impressed and made some strides during this training camp. I mean, is that enough to start? Maybe not. Farley's been a very, very good player for us, very productive. He shows up on the field. He shows up like he's making plays. But I would really love to see Willis. He kind of excels a little bit more in that coverage role. He is a very, he's good at covering. And he plays like a Colts player who, we like the players who don't give up on the play. They're always running to the ball, willing to tackle. And I think that really exemplifies Willis and his skill set.
Yeah, man, I kind of agree with that. We'll just have to see. It'll be a very cool position to kind of see play out. Good news is for the Colts, if we can stay healthy, we're going to have some depth at that position for once. Um, what about you, man? Are there any position battles that you're looking forward to seeing so far?
Yeah, so one I think the bigger ones that really could have an impact on the roster is going to be the kick returner and the punt returner spots. So obviously we had last year where we had Naheem Hines try to go out and try to take that role, and it just seemed like we kind of put too much on his plate. He was a slot receiver, he was a running back, he was this and that, and he failed in the preseason last year. It was kind of a disaster. So they've given him some reps this year. They actually had Deion Kane take a little bit of kick returner reps. Obviously they have Chester Rogers and Zach Pascal still taking those reps as well. And then they have undrafted free agent Penny Hart, who's actually been kind of injured this whole off season, so they haven't really seen too much of him. But I think this position can really have an impact on who's making that 53-man roster at the end of it. So right now, I think Pascal was taking the kick return last year, and Ballard's really kind of talked him up a lot. I didn't realize last year, he was one of those June kind of waiver pickups, so he wasn't, there with the team the whole time. So, another year in the season, he might actually have the inside track for that.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you one thing. You mentioned Penny Hart earlier, a guy I kind of liked as an undrafted guy. And players like that, if they want to make this football team, especially on a team that's very deep at wide receiver, special teams is huge for the Colts. Chris Ballard values that a whole lot. He doesn't overlook that. In the past years, the Colts have kind of neglected that special teams, but not under his regime. And I think if Penny Hart wants to have any chance of making this team with this deep wide receiver roster, he's going to have to kind of show out in the preseason and say, hey, I can take this by the reins and I can maybe make my own path for this football team. Um, as far as any other position battles, are you good or you ready to move on to something else?
So I guess we could actually kind of talk about the second team defensive end, obviously with Sheard going to be sidelined for part of the season. Uh, we do have some really good replacements for him. Obviously, no one at the level of Sheard, but let's go over a couple of them. Obviously Kamoko Toure, our second round pick last year. He came into this offseason a little bit more bulked up. There was some reps against Anthony Costanzo, where I guess he just kind of blew him up, went past him. So that's kind of impressive out of him. We have one of our waiver pickups last year, Al-Quadid Muhammad, who really does play like a really good Colts player. He's got a really good motor, seems to always be, high effort every single play. He's probably a little bit not as good of a pass rusher, but he does have a plus in the run game. So I think he's probably looking like the starter week one. I know the Colts really want to put Tyquan Lewis at that defensive tackle position, but he can play defensive end. That's where they actually started him last year when Toure was kind of injured and he came back. So I think Lewis could actually have a really good chance at that starting role, as I believe it's going to be the left end position. I think Houston's on the right. So
Yeah,
yeah,
man. One guy I kind of would be interested in kind of seeing a little bit more about would be Ben Banogu. Um, just hadn't heard a lot about that guy. I mean, especially to be a second round pick. During camp, haven't heard a whole lot of buzz about him. Muhammad, like you mentioned earlier, he's a plus in the run game. Muhammad really is a player that kind of does all those things right. He makes it hard on a team to cut him. He's not going to flash. He's never going to probably be a double-digit sack guy, but he's very, very consistent, plays exactly the way that Eberflus values effort and energy, and he has both. As far as a pass rusher, I want to see Toure maybe take that next step. He worked exclusively with Robert Mathis in the offseason, and we surely hope that translates into something special alongside of Justin Houston. Justin Houston is a career pass rusher, a really, really good, solid pass rusher. But my only hesitation with Houston, can he play all 16 games? And if you look at his past, the past says no. The past says he's not going to make it 6. So somebody's going to have to fill that void, especially when you got a guy who's been consistent like Sheard. Sheard gets a lot of coverage sacks. Sheard never has been the type of guy for double digits either, but he's constantly pushing that pocket and helping those interior guys and the guys on the opposite side as well. So all good points there. I think we'll kind of wrap this one up, and we're going to kind of dive into another category. Here at Colts Nation 365, we kind of pride ourselves on being kind of diving deep into all of the Colts stuff. So we're going to dive into some contract extension talk, kind of get into a little bit of the specifics of what that may look like. I did a little research on sporttrack.com, and I think you guys might appreciate some of the things that we came up with. So first of all, just want to kind of talk about Anthony Costanzo. And what it would be to extend him. Like I said, I looked up Sports Track earlier, and the highest paid tackle in the NFL right now is Taylor Lewan, $16 million a year, and that's kind of the gold standard. And then the 10th highest payer is Tyron Smith, $12.2 million. So what I kind of did was come up with an average of $14.1 million right there. And somewhere in the $13 to $14.1 million range is probably where you figure Costanzo to be. I think Ballard would love to give him a 3-year extension. I'm not sure if he wants to commit 4 or 5 years to him or not, but I'll just tell you this right now. Left tackles are not easy to come by. So that's one position. If you are going to overpay, that's a position I would probably champion that. What do you think about Costanzo and a possible contract extension?
Yeah, like you just said, left tackles are really difficult to find. I really believe that Ballard was looking for a replacement in the draft this year, and I think he had too many other players that he wanted, wasn't able to get the right value on a player. We picked up a couple seventh round, offensive line players. I don't think either of them are going to be near the level of Anthony Costanzo. So I would be really okay with getting him kind of like a really front-loaded contract. He's making $11 million this year. This is his last year of his contract. Maybe like a 3-year, $45 million. Just kind of overpay him, make sure that he's on the roster. I would be kind of like you, a little bit scared to go for 4 or 5 years. You never know with an offensive lineman. It's one play and he's out for the season. And you never really know what's going to happen with that. So I would go a little bit more 3 years, $45 million. Just make sure he's on the roster. If he got that $15 million mark, it'd be about third in the league as of right now. I think that's a good spot for him. Reward your own. Ballard has already done that. That's about where I would go with him.
Cool, man. I think we'll move on to another popular player, Ryan Kelly. I did a Twitter poll the other day and asked them actually the 3 people we're going to talk about here. And the number one guy that they said they wanted extended was Ryan Kelly. He got 63% of the votes. Second was Anthony Costanzo, and third was the guy we're going to mention here in a minute. So this one's interesting. So the highest paid center is actually Mitch Morse out of Buffalo. He gets 11.1, but I really reference Marquise Pouncey, which gets 11, just $100,000 a year less. That's kind of the gold standard there. And then you got your 10th highest paid center at $8.9 million. There's not a huge variance all the way from 10th to first. You got a $2.2 million difference. And on this one, I actually think Ryan Kelly will set the market. I think he'll actually be the highest paid center in the NFL, whether it's with us, with another team. I don't know if it's too early. It's just kind of hard to get a gauge on Ballard yet because he hasn't kind of come into these guys that are on and they're due to get that extension. It'll be interesting to see how he does that in the future. Kelly's a guy I would invest in. That continuity on the offensive line is really paramount for this football team. And having Kelly and, Big Q56, Quentin Nelson, having Anthony Costanzo all on that one side, along with Braden Smith. And then you got Gawincy, who went with a 3-year team-friendly deal for $18 million. I would condone them signing him. What do you think about Kelly, man?
Yeah, so obviously he's on his fourth year of the rookie contract. Plus, we still have the fifth-year option because he's a first-round pick. That fifth-year option, as of right now, for this year's offensive linemen that were picked after spot 10, is about 9.5 already. So obviously that's going to get picked up. And I think there's a really good chance that Ryan Kelly, if he shows out and he's healthy this year, he could earn All Pro. He could earn a Pro Bowl nod, and he's going to be regarded as one of the best centers in the league. I mean, I think he's pretty close to that already. So resetting the market would not be a surprise for me. We're probably going to lock him up. I would say a 4-year extension. So if we did that this year, it'd be under control for about 6 years. So if we look at 4 years extension, 44 million, 45 million, and I would be really happy to keep him around. I don't know if Ballard's going to want to do it. Maybe he wants him to prove that he can stay healthy for the whole entire year. But that fifth-year option is getting picked up pretty much no matter what. He's already proven that he is a good player, and I really think he might wait on this contract just because of the health issues so far.
Cool, man. I think we both agree on that. We'll move to a really popular topic. Eric Ebron, he's a Colts favorite. And this one really is probably the one where I take maybe a different angle. Ebron is already one of the highest paid tight ends. He's number 12 at about 6.5 a year. The highest paid tight end in the NFL is Jimmy Graham at $10 million. And that's hard to believe. Actually, the second is Travis Kelce at 9.3. And, Kelce had an incredible year last year. Number 10 would be Cameron Braid at $6.8 million. And then you got a lot of guys in the middle. And one comp I kind of gave him was Zach Ertz. His stats were nowhere near what Zach Ertz's stats were last year. But you're always going to overpay in free agency if you want to keep a guy. That's just kind of how the market tends to just keep going up every year. But this is one I think Ballard's going to be very, very strict on. He's going to set a number. He's going to say, look, we want you to be a Colt. We like you, but we cannot pay you in excess. For this position, Frank has always been really good at grooming tight ends, whether it be in, San Diego or, his time they spent with the Eagles. And even here, we've got some good up and coming guys, and I'm not sure that we're willing to break the bank. I think we're going to pay him. We like him. We love his team first attitude. If he wants to go out and get that big 9.5, 10.5, $11 million deal, I think we're probably going to pass and probably going to let him go. Although I would love to see him stay. What are your thoughts on that one, Chris?
Yeah, so obviously I really do like Ebron. He's really good for the locker room. He's been, a really team first guy, like you said. But I kind of got to agree with you. He's probably the least likely on this list to get extended. He is kind of a little bit more one dimensional. He is, just that pass catching tight end. I guess he has worked a little bit on his blocking this year. I don't know how much that's really going to help him in terms of scheme because we do have, Mo Ali Cox, who's already kind of a better blocker than him, and he's kind of being a little bit better at his route running. So I'm gonna kind of agree with you that Ebron, we're gonna want to extend him. Probably not going to overpay him. There's really no sense in doing that. We have Mo Ali Cox, we have Ross Travis behind him, and we're proving that we can take a tight end and we can teach what to do. And I really think Ebron, especially on the open market, maybe his numbers are going to suffer this year because of how many pass catchers we actually have. So that could be in our favor that he might not get paid as much. Maybe there's a chance he does take a hometown discount. The Colts did believe in him to bring him over to us. I don't know if there was a bunch of, offers on the market for him, but this has been a really good spot for him. I would love to see him around for a few more years. I just don't think we're going to overpay him. There's no reason to do that for the Colts.
Yeah, I just don't see the sense in overpaying them. Really, for a position that you can't replace 13 touchdowns a year. You can't do it. But I just don't think that that's going to be an every year. Now, if he comes out this year and he has 10 plus touchdowns, I think then you look at things maybe a little bit different. You say, all right, this guy is really, really, really special in this and to this degree. But I think Funches, Paris Campbell, Naeem Hines, Marlon Mack, I think those touchdowns are going to get spread out so far with this team. Even Jack Doyle, who, side note, you could probably sign him back for a 3-year deal at a very, very team-friendly deal. So I think moving on to our last topic, Marlon Mack is a guy who a lot of Colts really, really like around here. Frank Reich believes he can be a top 5 runner in the NFL. And I know you kind of had some thoughts on that one. I'll let you take this one over, Chris. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so especially if Marlon Mack could stay healthy, I really think the Colts run game is going to take a really big leap forward. I know Frank Reich wants it to be a little bit more of a top 5 run attack. I don't see that as much as people would hope for. But we do have a lot of really good things going for us. You talked about Jack Doyle returning. The dual skill set that he has of being a really good blocker and of being a really good pass catcher. Uh, you know, when Ebron's on the field, we kind of knew it was going to be a pass. When Ryan Hewitt was on the field, we knew it was going to be a run. But with Jack Doyle on the field, you can kind of disguise it a little bit more. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. And then the development of Mo Alley Cox alongside Jack Doyle, uh, you know, if he can prove to be a little bit more of a pass catcher, I mean, 2 tight end sets with Doyle and Cox. That would be pretty damn amazing for a running game. And
Absolutely.
then, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think they really are on the right track. And I actually think our offensive line takes that next step forward. They had a really good year last year. And I think this year they go and take it even further. I think they took it personal, that Kansas City game last year. It really, really bothered them, getting their ass whipped. I mean, that's call it what it is. But I mean, Ballard said it. They just got whipped at all phases of that game. And I think they're going to have an edge to them this year. And I think they want to be special. That's a special group of men together. And just having, Howard Mudd, a Hall of Fame offensive line technician, you know, we really, really have the right. We have the right stuff to be a very good running team this year, and it'll be interesting to see. And we also have some other guys that could also take over the reins. We have Spencer Ware, we have Jordan Wilkins. Hines, I don't look at as a great runner. And even Jonathan Williams, who they were pretty high on. I think a team actually was going to sign him last year, and we actually promoted him to the 53. So that'll be interesting to see how this rushing offense goes this year. I think we had really good stuff on the show this week. Guys, always message us on Twitter if you ever have any questions, concerns here at Colts Nation 365. Just some info to put this out there for you guys. Chris DuBoise is obviously on Twitter at Get Cultured, but you can also check out some of his writing he's going to do on my brand new website. He's been so gracious to help me on www.coltsnation365.com. He's going to be my lead writer. He's always coming up with cool, great ideas. But if you want to know about something, you want to hear about something, you just let us know. Either one of his direct messages on Twitter, you can go to the website. We're also going to be starting to stream these things on YouTube. We just want to be accessible to the Colts, the Colts culture. This is something that we believe in. And at Colts Nation 365, we're not just interested in the regular season. We're interested in the postseason. We're interested in the draft. We're interested in, training camp. We're interested in free agency. That's really the model, 365. We're Colts fans every day of the year. So that being said, look forward to some new content coming out every Tuesday. And I think Chris and I have talked about doing maybe some fantasy football stuff moving forward. Let us know what you think about, if you have any players you want to know about. And I think he'll be writing about that in the future. Thanks, guys. And thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Zach.